The planet Zereth 5 had many names. The Galactic Union called it a red zone, a world too dangerous to colonize. The few who tried called it a graveyard. But among soldiers, bounty hunters, and explorers, it had another name, the Hell World. Captain Alex Carter knew all the stories. Every species that had ever set foot on Zereth 5 had either fled or died. The creatures that ruled it, the Voraxxes, were beyond taming. Massive, muscular beasts with razor-sharp claws and bone-plated skulls, they were nature's perfect predators. No technology, no weapons, no amount of training had ever been enough to control them. And yet, Alex had come to do exactly that. As his ship, the Valkyrie, descended through the thick red clouds of Zereth 5, turbulence rattled the hull. His crew was silent, tense. The Union had banned anyone from stepping foot on this world. If they were caught, they would be labeled criminals. But Alex didn't care. Humanity was at war. The Union wanted them weak, wanted them to obey. Alex wanted to survive. And to survive, he needed an army. The moment the ship touched the ground, a strange silence filled the air. No wind, no animal calls, just an eerie, oppressive stillness. The jungle around them was alien, filled with thick, twisted trees covered in black thorns. The ground pulsed slightly, as if the planet itself was alive. Alex grabbed his rifle and stepped off the ship, his boots sinking slightly into the damp soil. Behind him, his team followed. Reed, his weapons expert, Dr. Voss, the team's xenobiologist, and Silva, his second-in-command. "Scanners up," Alex ordered. "I want a full sweep." Reed activated a hovering drone. It floated into the trees, its sensors scanning for movement. "Nothing yet," Reed said, "but something's off. No birds, no small creatures, no signs of anything." Silva frowned. "Maybe we got lucky. Maybe they're sleeping." Dr. Voss shook her head. "The Voraxx don't sleep. At least, not the way we understand it." Alex felt it too, a presence. They were being watched. A low, guttural growl echoed from the jungle. The sound vibrated through the ground, deep and menacing. Then the trees moved. No, not trees. Eyes. Glowing red eyes, appearing one by one in the darkness. They blinked, studied, hunted. Reed tightened his grip on his rifle. "Captain, we are not alone." A single Voraxx emerged from the shadows. It was huge, nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in bone-plated armor. Its claws scraped against the ground as it moved. Its breath came out in slow, measured huffs, its nostrils flaring as it scented them. Then, without warning, it charged. Alex didn't move. His team raised their weapons, but he lifted a hand. "Hold." The beast skidded to a stop just a few feet away. Its deep red eyes locked onto Alex, unblinking, unreadable. It growled, low and threatening, but it didn't attack. Silva whispered, "What the hell are you doing?" Alex didn't answer. He held its gaze, standing firm, unmoving. In every first contact report with the Voraxx, other species had run. They had fought, screamed, or fired weapons. Alex did none of those things. The Voraxx let out a slow, rumbling breath. Then it tilted its head. A test, a challenge. Alex did the same. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the beast took a step back. Reed exhaled. Did you just stare down a Voraxx?" Alex smiled. "I think we just made first contact." But before anyone could celebrate, a second growl came from behind them. Then a third. The red eyes in the jungle multiplied. They were surrounded. The Voraxx did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They circled, their glowing red eyes locked onto the humans like wolves stalking prey. Alex kept his stance firm, refusing to break eye contact with the largest one, the first to emerge. The way it had paused, the way it had studied him instead of attacking outright, meant something. These creatures weren't just killers. They were thinking, calculating. But calculation didn't mean mercy. A low, rumbling growl passed between them, deep and resonant. It wasn't a sound of hunger. It was a warning. Reed's fingers hovered over the trigger of his rifle. "Captain, say the word, and I'll drop it." Alex didn't answer. If they fired the first shot, this would turn into a massacre. And they weren't the ones who would walk away. The largest Voraxx took a step forward. Its muscles tensed, the thick plates along its shoulders shifting like armor preparing for impact. It was testing him again. Alex took a slow breath. Then, carefully, he reached to his belt and pulled out a small ration bar. Silva's voice was barely above a whisper. "What the hell are you doing?" Alex didn't respond. He tore the wrapper open, exposing the dense protein inside. Then, deliberately, he crouched and placed it on the ground. He didn't back away, didn't flinch. He just waited. The Voraxx tilted its head again, its long nostrils flaring. The others around it didn't move, but Alex could feel their focus sharpening. Slowly, the beast lowered itself. Its clawed hand, almost like a massive armored paw, reached forward. The moment it touched the food, something shifted. A silent understanding passed between them. The Voraxx wasn't just taking the food. It was acknowledging the offer. It scooped the bar up, lifted it to its mouth, and ate. Reed muttered, "No way." Alex's heart was pounding, but he forced himself to remain still. The beast chewed once, twice, then swallowed. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it huffed out a breath. Not a growl, not a snarl. Something else. Then suddenly, the Voraxx's head snapped up, its ears twitching. A new sound echoed through the jungle, a sharp, screeching roar. The others around them turned as well. Their glowing eyes narrowed. Something was coming. The largest Voraxx spun, its stance shifting from cautious to defensive. The jungle trembled, and then they saw them. From the trees emerged another pack. These Voraxx were different, bigger, darker, and covered in deep scars. Their red eyes gleamed with a raw, unfiltered aggression. Reed cursed. "Oh, that doesn't look good." Silva tightened her grip on her rifle. "We're about to find out just how much they like us." The first Voraxx, the one Alex had fed, growled. A deep, commanding sound. The others in its group responded immediately, stepping forward, forming a line between the humans and the newcomers. Alex realized what was happening. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a territorial dispute. The newcomers roared, their bodies lowering into attack stances. And then the Voraxx Alex had fed lunged. The jungle exploded into chaos. The two groups collided with a sickening crunch of bodies and claws. The battle was raw, primal, a war between titans. The air filled with snarls and roars, with the sound of teeth snapping against bone armor. Alex and his team stayed perfectly still. Reed swallowed hard. "Captain, what do we do?" Alex didn't move. He watched. He studied. And then he understood. The way they fought wasn't just mindless savagery. There was tactic, coordination. The leader of their group wasn't just attacking. It was giving signals, directing its fighters. These creatures weren't wild animals. They were soldiers. And right now, Alex and his team were standing in the middle of their battlefield. The battle was violent, raw, and unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The two Voraxx packs clashed with bone-crushing force, their armored bodies colliding like war machines. Claws raked against thick, plated hides, and sharp teeth snapped inches away from exposed throats. Roars and guttural snarls echoed through the jungle, drowning out even the hum of the Valkyrie's engines. Alex and his team didn't dare move. They were caught in the middle of a war between titans. Silva tightened her grip on her rifle, her knuckles white. "Captain, we need to get the hell out of here." Alex didn't respond immediately. He was watching, learning. The Voraxx weren't just attacking wildly. Their leader, the one Alex had fed, was fighting with strategy. It didn't charge blindly. It directed its pack, pushing them into formation, cutting off escape routes for the enemy. It moved with purpose, signaling with deep growls and quick glances. Alex felt a chill crawl down his spine. These creatures were more than just beasts. They were tactical. Then, suddenly, one of the hostile Voraxx broke free from the battle and charged straight at them. Reed fired first. The tranquilizer dart shot through the air, striking the beast in the side. It barely stumbled. Didn't even flinch. Reed shouted, already reloading. Before he could fire again, a blur of motion shot past them. The leader Voraxx slammed into the charging enemy, knocking it off its feet. With a swift, brutal movement, it sank its teeth into the other creature's exposed neck and ripped. The enemy Voraxx collapsed, dead. But what happened next sent a shiver through Alex's team. The leader didn't turn back to its pack. It didn't celebrate its kill. It turned and locked eyes with Alex. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Then it did something no one expected. It stepped back, a deliberate motion, a calculated retreat. And it waited. Dr. Voss whispered, "It's deferring to you." Silva blinked. "That's impossible." Alex understood. He had seen this kind of behavior before, in wolves, in lions, in soldiers. It was a show of respect, the leader acknowledging another. And Alex had a choice. He could step back, let the creature take control again, or he could accept. His heart pounded. His mind screamed at him that this was insane, but something deep in his gut told him exactly what to do. Slowly, carefully, Alex took a step forward. The Voraxx didn't move. It watched. It waited. Another step, and another, until Alex stood barely a meter away from the beast. It was massive, towering over him, its muscles tensed, its breath slow and steady. Alex lowered his weapon. A deep silence fell over the battlefield. Even the remaining Voraxx had stopped fighting, their bloodied bodies shifting as they turned to watch. The leader huffed once, a deep, measured breath. Then it did the unthinkable. It bowed its head, a submission gesture, a sign of trust. No species had ever tamed the Voraxx. No species had ever commanded them. But now, in the heart of this deadly jungle, in the middle of a battlefield soaked with blood, a human had. Silva exhaled. "Captain, what did you just do?" Alex didn't take his eyes off the creature. Something no one else dared to try. The Voraxx straightened, turned to its pack, and released a low, commanding growl. And just like that, the remaining Voraxx backed away from the fight. The battle was over. Alex knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that something had just changed. The Voraxx had accepted him. And now, they would follow. The jungle was silent now, except for the heavy breathing of the Voraxx warriors. The bodies of the fallen lay scattered across the clearing, steam rising from their wounds. The metallic scent of blood lingered in the damp air, mixing with the thick, earthy aroma of Xerath 5's soil. Alex stood at the center of it all, his heart still pounding. The leader of the Voraxx, his Voraxx now, stood by his side, watching him with those deep, glowing red eyes. This shouldn't have been possible. Silva and Reed remained frozen in place, staring at the pack of massive creatures that had, just minutes ago, been locked in brutal combat. Now, they stood calm, their aggression tempered by a force no other species in the galaxy had ever managed to wield. Human will. Dr. Voss whispered, "Captain, I don't think you realize what just happened." Alex did. That was the terrifying part. He had just claimed dominance over one of the deadliest species in the universe. Before he could respond, a sharp beep crackled through his comms, a signal from the Valkyrie. "Captain Carter, we have a problem," came the voice of their pilot, Lieutenant Harris. Long-range scanners just picked up multiple incoming ships. Alex's stomach dropped. "Who?" Harris hesitated. "Union forces. 3 warships. ETA. 10 minutes." The team stiffened. The Galactic Union. They had been found. Reed muttered a curse under his breath. They must have been tracking us. Probably got wind the moment we landed. Silva clenched her jaw. They're not here for negotiations, are they? No, Alex said. They're here to make sure no one tries what we just did. The Union doesn't want anyone messing with the Voraxx. And if they see this, Dr. Voss gestured toward the creatures standing beside them. Alex already knew the answer. They'll bomb this place to hell. The Union had spent decades ensuring the Voraxx remained untamed, isolated. If they saw a human commanding them, controlling them, they wouldn't take any chances. They'd wipe out everything, including his team, including the Voraxx. A low growl rumbled from the leader of the pack. The other Voraxx shifted, their powerful bodies tensing as if they could sense the coming threat. Alex met the leader's gaze and felt something unspoken pass between them. The Voraxx might not have understood human words, but they understood war, and they could feel one coming. Alex turned back to his team. We don't have time to get back to the Valkyrie. If we try to run, we're dead before we reach orbit. Silva frowned. Then what do? We can't fight Union warships. Alex glanced at the Voraxx. Maybe not, he said. But they can. Reed blinked. You want to use them against the Union? Are you insane? Think about it, Alex said. The Union expects the Voraxx to be mindless killers. They think they're just wild animals. They have no idea what they're really capable of. We can use that. Dr. Voss hesitated. You're suggesting we command them. Alex looked at the Voraxx leader. The massive creature stood still, watching him in that same way it had before, waiting. Not as an enemy, not as a beast, as a soldier awaiting orders. He nodded once. Yes. The Voraxx leader let out a deep, rumbling growl, stepping forward. The others followed. Silva swallowed. This is either the smartest thing you've ever done, or the last. Alex smirked. Let's hope it's the first. The sky above darkened as the first of the Union ships broke through the atmosphere. The battle was about to begin. The sky above Zereth 5 split open as the Union warships descended, their massive hulls blocking out the red-tinged sunlight. Their sleek metallic surfaces gleamed ominously, reflecting the eerie glow of the jungle below. The distant hum of their engines sent vibrations through the ground, a sound that meant only one thing. Destruction was coming. Alex stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the ships positioned themselves overhead. His pulse was steady, his mind already racing through the possibilities. They had no way to outrun the Union. The Valkyrie was fast, but against 3 warships armed with plasma cannons and orbital strike capabilities, it was like trying to outrun a storm with a paper sail. No, the only way to survive was to do the impossible. They had to win. The Voraxx leader growled, its deep, rumbling voice vibrating through the air. The rest of the pack shifted in response, their thick, armored bodies coiling with anticipation. They could sense it. The battle, the tension, the looming violence. They were ready. Reed gripped his rifle. Captain, I really hope you have a plan that doesn't involve getting vaporized. Alex smirked. For once. I do. He turned to the Voraxx leader, meeting its glowing red gaze. These creatures had already proven they could think, strategize, follow orders. Now, it was time to push that even further. He stepped forward and raised a hand. The leader tilted its head slightly, watching him, waiting. Alex pointed to the sky. Then, in one sharp motion, he clenched his fist. A command. A declaration of war. For a moment, the Voraxx leader was still. Then, a slow, deep growl built in its chest. The other Voraxx responded instantly, their own snarls joining together into a single, terrifying battle cry. And then, they moved. The jungle erupted as the Voraxx surged forward, their massive bodies disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Their movement was swift, coordinated. They weren't running blindly. They had a purpose. They had a target. Silva exhaled. Tell me we're not actually betting our lives on this. Alex turned toward her. Silva, when's the last time you saw an army that could climb a warship? She blinked. What? But before she could question further, the first explosion shook the jungle. The Union had opened fire. Plasma bolts rained down, scorching the earth and setting the trees ablaze. The sky flashed with deadly energy, turning the red clouds into a battlefield of fire and smoke. The ground beneath them trembled from the force of the blasts. Alex activated his comms. Harris, status. The Valkyrie's pilot responded immediately, his voice laced with urgency. Shields at 60%, but we can't take off. They've got us locked in with targeting beams. If we try to move, we're fried. Alex gritted his teeth. Hold position. We're handling it. Silva gave him a sharp look. How, exactly, are we handling it? As if in answer, a Union warship, one of the three, suddenly jerked violently to the side. Reed's mouth dropped open. No way. From the treetops, dark shapes leaped onto the hull. The Voraxx had scaled the massive ship like predators hunting prey, their razor-sharp claws digging into the metal plating. They moved with terrifying speed, their bodies weaving through the enemy's defenses like living weapons. And then, they attacked. The ship's hull screeched as Voraxx claws tore through it. Explosions burst across the surface as they ripped open access points, tearing apart key components. Sparks rained from the engines as the creatures ripped out power conduits with their bare hands. The warship began to spiral. Reed let out a laugh, half disbelief, half admiration. They're taking the damned ship apart. The Union, for all its power, had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated the Voraxx. And more importantly, they had underestimated humanity's ability to command them. The second warship adjusted course, attempting to provide covering fire. But it was too late. The Voraxx were already moving. Another wave of them launched from the trees, leaping onto the second warship like living missiles. The jungle trembled with the sound of battle. The Union had come expecting to crush an unauthorized human crew. Instead, they had walked into a war they were not prepared for. Alex turned to his team, his expression calm despite the chaos around them. Now, he said, we fight. The sky burned with fire and chaos. The first Union warship, covered in swarming Voraxx, lurched violently as explosions tore through its hull. Its engines flickered, struggling against the damage. The beasts had ripped apart critical systems in minutes, turning one of the most advanced warships in the galaxy into a failing hunk of metal. The second ship fared no better. It had only just begun evasive maneuvers when another wave of Voraxx launched from the treetops, their massive bodies colliding with the hull like living missiles. Their claws found purchase in the ship's plating, and they climbed, unstoppable, relentless. Inside the cockpit of the Valkyrie, Harris's voice crackled over comms. Captain, whatever the hell you did, it's working. Their firepower is dropping fast. Alex didn't have time to respond. A third ship, the largest of them all, was descending lower, its weapons primed. This one wasn't trying to fight the Voraxx directly. It was preparing an orbital strike. A single blast from that cannon could level the entire jungle. Reed. Alex barked. Do we have any launchers left? Reed was already moving, sprinting toward their supply crates. We got one, but it's not enough tow. An ear-piercing screech cut through the air. Alex turned just in time to see the Voraxx leader whip its head toward the descending warship. It had been watching the battle unfold, but now it had made a decision. It let out a deep, commanding howl. The remaining Voraxx, those that had not yet attacked, responded immediately. Dozens of them erupted from the jungle shadows, moving with terrifying speed. They did not attack the ship's hull this time. They jumped straight for the open thrusters. Reed's eyes widened. Oh, hell. Alex didn't hesitate. Everybody, down. The first Voraxx hit the ship's exposed engine, and detonated on impact. Not because it was carrying explosives, but because the force of its body, combined with the sheer heat of the thrusters, ignited the fuel lines. A second Voraxx followed, then a third. They were sacrificing themselves. The engine exploded. The warship trembled in the air, sparks and flames cascading from the breach. Then, gravity won. The entire ship tilted. A deafening roar of failing metal filled the sky as the massive warship plummeted, straight toward the jungle. Alex barely had time to react before the impact shook the earth, sending a shockwave of dirt, fire, and debris in all directions. He hit the ground, covering his head as the shockwave passed over them. Trees snapped like twigs. The ground split. The jungle screamed. Then, silence. Smoke and dust filled the air. The wreckage of the warship sat in a burning heap, its mighty frame twisted beyond recognition. The jungle itself looked different, scared, but standing, just like them. Alex pushed himself up, coughing. His team was alive. A little bruised, but alive. Silva let out a breath. That did not just happen. Reed was still flat on his back. I think I'm dead. Am I dead? Dr. Voss stared at the wreckage. They knew. Alex followed her gaze to the Voraxx leader. The massive creature stood tall, battered but undefeated. It had lost many of its pack, but it had achieved victory. The Voraxx had made a choice. They had fought, strategized, and ultimately sacrificed themselves for a greater cause. Not just for survival, but for loyalty. The last Union ship, heavily damaged and realizing its fate, began retreating into orbit. They were running. Alex smirked. Yeah, you better run. Silva turned to him. Captain, what now? Alex looked at the Voraxx leader. And then, slowly, he knelt. The leader watched him carefully. Then, in a moment that sent chills through every human present, it knelt, too. The remaining Voraxx followed. For the first time in history, humanity had done the impossible. They had not only tamed the Voraxx, they had become their leaders. The battlefield was silent now, except for the distant crackle of burning wreckage. The Union warships were gone. 2 destroyed, 1 retreating. The jungle, though scared, still stood. Smoke curled into the sky, carrying with it the scent of plasma burns, scorched metal, and blood. Alex remained kneeling before the Voraxx leader, his breathing steady. The massive creature knelt as well, its glowing red eyes locked onto his. The others followed, lowering their monstrous bodies in unison. No one spoke, no one moved. This moment was something that had never happened before in the history of the galaxy. Humanity had done what every other species had failed to do. They had tamed the untamable. Silva exhaled, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't real. Dr. Voss swallowed hard. It's real. Reed sat up from the dirt, rubbing his head. So, we're just gonna pretend like we didn't just overthrow a Union operation with a bunch of space monsters. Alex slowly rose to his feet. The Voraxx leader did the same, watching him closely, waiting. It wasn't looking at him like prey. Not even like an equal. It was looking at him like a commander. The weight of it settled on Alex's shoulders. He wasn't just some explorer anymore. He wasn't just the captain of a small crew. He had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy, and the Union would never forgive him for it. His comm crackled. Captain. Harris's voice came through, still tense but controlled. Scans show the remaining Union ship is leaving orbit. Looks like they're cutting their losses. They'll be back, Silva muttered. And next time, they won't underestimate us. Alex knew she was right. The Union had spent decades making sure the Voraxx remained wild, uncontrolled. They had seen what happened today. They wouldn't let it stand. They would come back with more ships, more firepower, more ways to burn this jungle to the ground. Unless... He looked at the Voraxx again. They had fought like warriors. They had strategized, adapted, and sacrificed. They weren't mindless beasts. They weren't just predators. They were an army. And now, they were his. Alex turned to his team. We can't stay here. The Union will send reinforcements. Silva frowned. And go where? We can't exactly take these guys onto a space station. We don't need a station. Alex looked toward the wreckage of the Union warships. We need a fleet. Reed raised an eyebrow. You're not seriously suggesting. I am. He stepped toward the fallen warships. They were damaged, yes, but not beyond repair. The Union had left behind their own weapons, their own technology, and Alex intended to use it. We salvage what we can, he continued. We take the Union's tech, their ships, their weapons, and we use them to build something bigger. Dr. Voss caught on first. You're talking about a stronghold, a base. Not just a base. Alex turned back to the Voraxx leader. The creature stood tall, watching him, waiting. A kingdom. Silva stared at him. You want to go to war with the entire Galactic Union? Alex smirked. No. I want to make sure the next time they come for us, they're the ones who are afraid. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, the Voraxx howled. It wasn't a battle cry this time. It was something deeper. A declaration. They weren't just following him anymore. They weren't just obeying. They had chosen him. The Voraxx had a king now. And only humans would dare to lead them.